Okay, good afternoon, Year 10. Welcome to episode 6 of Mr. MALTBY'S home learning series. Today we're going to be looking at adaptations in animals. Just wanted to go through the work that was set here. So just a reminder around the dirt tasks that are set on the whole class feedback and the individual feedback that's given to you. So do those dirt tasks and submit on teams assignments. I also forgot to put in here the submit, so please remember to take pictures every Monday. So take pictures of the work that you've done and then submit onto Teams for me to have a look at. Like I said, the new topic is adaptations in animals. By now you should have done, well, if you haven't quite done it by now, that's okay, but certainly before you watch this video, have done the pre-reading and initial kind of note-taking, and there's some optional questions for you to do before having a look at this video. And of course we'll have our weekly Q&A this Friday, period 4 at 12:10, and had some really nice discussion on the last Q&A with Kezia. We were talking about recent work, competition in plants, competition in animals. Really interesting discussion. So it'd be good to get some more of you in those sessions, and do drop in and have a chat with us. That'd be great. Okay, so as we said, this week we're looking at adaptations in animals, and you would have kind of visited this topic a little bit earlier when I set the extended task of creating your own creature. Okay, thinking about the adaptations and tying that in with demands of the environment. That was really interesting to see that. So just have a look at this picture here, and I just wanted to see what can you see in the image. Deeper thinking suggests how adaptations differ between prey and predators. So that's a really interesting one. So pause the video and have a little think. Okay, so we've got some keywords for today: structural, behavioural, functional, insulation, camouflage, and of course these are all the learning outcomes for this week. Suggest structural, behavioural, or functional adaptations. Describe how animals are adapted to live in hot, dry, and cold habitats, and classify adaptations as one of these three categories. Is the focus for this week. So, of course, what we can see in this image is the peppered moth, which is brilliantly camouflaged on the birch tree bark example, and we're going to return to the peppered moth, interestingly, later in the course in biology when we start thinking about evolution. So just have that in mind and think about that, about adaptations. So we'll return to that when we tackle the evolution topic. This is here suggest how adaptations differ between prey and predators. So you might have paused the video and have a little think about examples of predators and prey. If you think of any example, any sort of large cats, so think about a cheetah, for example, they have forward-facing eyes to hone in the prey, whereas zebras, antelope, they all have eyes on the side, to give them a larger field of vision to see oncoming predators. So there's lots and lots of very small kind of different adaptations, even within these kind of animal examples. Okay? Between predator and prey. That's really interesting. You might want to do some extra research around that. What other factors, what other adaptations can you find that are different between predators and prey? And so if you want to pause the video and do some extra research at this point, that would be great. So for those who are interested, this is the specification link, so you can pause the video and have a look at this if you would like. And then we're going to get straight into what would normally be our starters. So what features or adaptations do these organisms need to survive in the conditions they live in? So we're thinking about the demands of the habitat, okay, and the demands that are placed on that animal, and what adaptations, special features do they have in order to survive. So you can pause the video. If you want to make notes, you can. If you just want to think about this, that's absolutely fine. Okay, you have got some, you have made some preliminary notes already, so don't feel like you have to make extra notes, but you can if you want to. Deeper thinking identifies each organism's adaptations as either structural, so how it could it be the part of the shape, the colour, behavioural, how they act, or functional, how it specifically works. Okay, so pause the video, have a little think, try and write down some different adaptations for each of them, and then we'll make some notes in a minute. Okay, so coming to our examples then, of course, our polar bear has a very thick fur coat. It has a small surface area to volume ratio. Okay, now we're going to explain that in detail shortly. Okay, and if we look at the shape of the polar bear, it has quite a lot of mass as an animal, but it has this, relatively speaking, a smaller surface area compared to its volume. Has very rounded limbs, shorter limbs compared to other animals like the camel, for example, smaller ears. So trying to reduce surface area. So pause the video now and think, why would it be important for the polar bear to have a smaller surface area to volume ratio? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, so having a small surface area to volume ratio reduces heat loss. Of course, animals lose heat through their skin, and if you have a smaller surface area to volume ratio, you can reduce that heat loss. Smaller surface area, less heat loss. And we'll come to think about that in the opposing kind of environment, and why having a larger surface area to volume ratio is important for animals that live in hotter conditions, because they want to get rid of that heat, they want to cool down. And so often animals that live in those hotter, drier conditions, like camels for example, will have much longer limbs, okay, and have overall a larger surface area to volume ratio. Of course, the walrus has got a very thick coat, lots and lots of fat, lots of fat underneath its skin to keep it warm. That's another key adaptation. We get a small surface area to volume ratio. Now, camel's super interesting. It has lots and lots of adaptations, many more than just these two here. There's often a misconception here that camels store water in their humps. They actually don't. They store fat, and that fat can then be broken down to produce water. Okay, so that's a good thing to remember in more detail. Okay, very little sweating. And of course, I'll question that. Very little sweating. Well, it's going to need to sweat to cool down, of course. And of course, there will be a slightly larger surface area to volume ratio as well. Other interesting features of the camel include the fact it's got broad hooves so it can walk in the sand. And the long limbs, not only to have a larger surface area to volume ratio, but to keep its body away from the hot sand. It's also another interesting adaptation. The lizard here also has camouflage and has a behavioural adaptation of basking in the sun. It's particularly important for cold-blooded organisms to be able to bask in the sun. And the S's here refer to whether they are structural, functional, and of course behavioural. So types of adaptations here, we can make some basic notes here about different types of adaptations, just going into a bit more detail if you haven't made notes already from the textbook. So behavioural adaptations are actions an organism takes, okay, for instance, to their behaviour. You've got a good example there in terms of migration, okay, moving to a better climate, summer or winter. Structural is how an organism is built, whether it's their shape, their colour for camouflage, shape maybe, for example, the shark for more streamlined, as a predator it needs to be streamlined to swim fast. And of course functional, how the organism actually works, relating to the processes, e.g. reproduction and metabolism. So a good example here is that the desert lizard producing very little, very concentrated urine to conserve water is a really good one. Antifreezing cells prevent water freezing in low temperature environments. So these are kind of functional, relating to processes. Okay, so behavioural actions, structural, how the organism is built, and functional, referring to processes. Okay, we see lots of different types within these categories and different examples. Okay, and yeah, it might be a good idea now if you're interested to pause the video and do some further research to see if you can come up with some more examples. Okay, so we've got a short video here that I'd like us to have a look at.
Do you notice anything unusual about this salamander? If you need a clue, in this cave there is usually no light. This is a Texas blind salamander, a type of salamander that has no eyes. In the perpetual darkness of the caves where it lives, they are of no use. Instead, its other senses have become highly developed. It can detect any movement in the water. It is completely aware of its surroundings, but all without eyes. By losing its eyes and developing other senses, the Texas blind salamander has adapted to its environment. All over the planet, plants and animals adapt to the challenges of their own habitat. These distant fox cousins range from the far frozen north of the Arctic to the scorching heat of the African desert, and everywhere in between, including your own street or back garden. Yes, I'm talking about you. In the distant past, these foxes would all have shared a common ancestor, but now they are all adapted to their local habitat. Can you spot how these animals differ from each other and why they have developed these differences? The Arctic fox has darker fur in the summer months, but when winter comes, it has developed this pure white coat to help it blend into the snow while scavenging and hunting. The fur is also thick and warm to cope with the extreme cold. What a pair of ears! I should probably talk quietly. But in fact, although foxes do have very good hearing, that is not the only reason why these desert foxes have such huge ears. It's also to keep cool. The desert fox's amazing ears help it keep cool by helping it to lose heat more quickly. Also notice how the coat is much thinner than that of its Arctic cousin. In the scorching desert, this fox is adapted to stay as cool as possible. This is why the desert fox is also most active at night. Nights in the desert can be very cool, and it's a time when many small desert animals are active. A perfect time for hunting. Nothing happening here. But in nature, things are not always what they seem. Many animals have adapted to use camouflage to hide and blend into their surroundings. Camouflage can be used as a form of defense to help the animal hide from predators. But it can also be used to help catch prey. Probably the undisputed master of camouflage in the whole animal kingdom is the amazing cuttlefish. The cuttlefish can change both the color and texture of its skin to match any environment, and these incredible transformations can all happen in the blink of an eye. There are amazing examples of camouflage everywhere in nature. But how did these incredible creatures develop this impressive talent? Offspring are not identical to their parents. Even if it is a very small difference, there is variation from one generation to the next. The better the camouflage of the offspring, the harder it is for them to be seen by predators or prey, and the more likely it is that they will survive and reproduce. Here is a simple example. These moths are from the same parents. Some are dark, some are light. In the local environment, the darker moths will be more easily seen by predators and will be less likely to survive. The lighter moths are more likely to reach adulthood and reproduce. When they do, they will be more likely to produce more lighter coloured offspring, so after several generations, the number of lighter moths will be higher than the darker moths. This is how a species can adapt and develop over time to match their environment. This is also true for animals that use camouflage to hunt. The better they are at hiding, the more successful they will be at catching food and surviving, and the more offspring they will produce. So, through variation, we can see how over time a species can evolve and adapt to their environment. Animals that are better adapted to their environment will be more successful in surviving and reproducing. This is a key part of what we call natural selection. And natural selection is a key part of evolution, which is what we call it when species change and develop over time.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that video shortly, but some really nice examples there, and also picking up on and relating to this idea of natural selection and evolution, so which we'll be coming to later in the year. So what we're going to do now is think about this specific, before we go have a task with the focusing on the video, we're going to think more specifically about this idea of surface area to volume ratio. Okay, so we've got a bit of maths to do here. So what I'd like you to do is to have a look at what's on the screen and to calculate the following for both shapes: the surface area, the volume, and then as a result the surface area to volume ratio, which you'll need to simplify down to its simplest form. To think more deeply, once you've done that, what happens to the surface area to volume ratio of organisms as they get bigger? For example, an elephant. And why then do elephants have big ears? An interesting one to think about. We'll come to that later. So, pause the video and have a go at calculating these surface areas, volumes, and surface area to volume ratio. Okay, so of course, surface area for a 1 centimetre cube is going to have 6 sides, therefore 6 centimetres in terms of area. Its volume will be 1 centimetre cube, because that's what we're looking at. And its surface area to volume ratio then is going to be 6 to 1, which we can't simplify. For the second example, example B, there's going to be 10 kind of exposed surfaces in terms of the surface area, and therefore 10 centimetres squared surface area, giving a 2 centimetre cube volume. And to simplify, 10 to 2 would become simplified, that's incorrect, to 5 to 1. So I should say 5 to 1 as a simplified version. So 10 to 2 down to 5 to 1. So just in doing that, we can see that as we increase the size of the organism, and we can think of these as almost like cells as well, if we think at a cellular level, if we increase the size of the organism, what is happening to that surface area to volume ratio? Bear in mind that should say 5 to 1. Okay. So what happens to the surface area to volume ratio of organisms as they get bigger? Why do elephants have big ears in this case, as an example? So pause the video and have a think. Okay, so of course, as we saw from the previous example, as the organism increases, surface area decreases as the organism gets bigger. Okay, larger animals like elephants have a small surface area compared to their volume. Okay, they lose heat to their surroundings more quickly, I should say. A smaller surface area to volume ratio, smaller surface area, they can lose heat more slowly and have difficulty avoiding overheating. To overcome this problem, elephants have larger ears, okay, with a large surface area compared to their volume. These allow heat to be transferred from the elephant to its surroundings, helping to keep them cool. Okay, so if this particular organism has a smaller surface area to its volume, it's going to be much harder to get rid of that heat. Okay, whereas with this example here, with our elephants, they're going to have those big, large ears. And if you think about the ears, the actual volume of mass to those ears compared to the surface area, okay, is much smaller. So they have a much larger surface area to the volume ratio, which means they can get rid of the heat from their ears. And the ears will have a really good blood supply, okay, and obviously you lose the heat from that. Okay, so hopefully lots of you were listening carefully to that video. I want you to have a go at completing your table using this table here, using information from the video And for further support, you can go back to page 270 of the textbook. So think back to that video. And if you want to pause the video now, in fact, if you pause the video now and draw out this table into your books, and then you can have a go at completing the table. So for each of these adaptations, you need to explain an explanation of how it helps the animal to survive. Okay, so pause the video, and then we'll go through these in a minute. Okay, so here we've got the Arctic fox example. So the thick layer of fur is going to trap a layer of air, okay, as an insulator. Again, the fat as an insulator, the food store. Small ears and nose. This relates to our surface area to volume ratio. So there's a smaller surface area to the volume, and therefore less heat loss by radiation, which is important. Larger bodies have, which means they have a smaller surface area to their volume, less surface, relatively speaking, which reduces the heat loss. And the larger body size means that there are more cells to generate heat. Camouflage, of course. We have the white fur, and as was pointed out in the video, that can change the colour depending on the environment. The Arctic fox, therefore, they're going to be less seen by predators and prey. Onto the desert fox, also known as the fennec fox. Okay. Very little fur. Okay. Again, because I want to lose the heat. I don't want to have lots of insulation. Okay. Larger ears. So greater surface area to lose more heat by radiation. Smaller bodies, long, sort of slender limbs as well. Okay, and that means, relatively speaking, they're going to have a larger surface area to volume ratio to increase the heat loss, as well as, I guess, less mass then as well to generate that heat by respiration. And of course, camouflage as well. This is where the animal blends in the background. Okay, and less easily seen by the predators and prey. So at this point you can go pause the video and go back through the answers and just double check, see if you got 5 out of 5, which would be great. And then we've got a final little task to try and sort these adaptations into whether they are structural, behavioural or functional. So pause the video, have a little think. And did we get 5 out of 5? Let's have a look. Okay, thanks very much for your attention. Hope you found that video useful. If you want to, go back through the video and double check you've got everything correct and add any further additions if needed. And if you want to come onto Teams and ask some questions, that'd be great. And I'll see you all, hopefully, on Friday for the Q&A. Okay, thanks very much. Speak to you soon.